Next, we're going to move on to Sutra 49. That firm posture being acquired, the movements of inhalation and exhalation should be controlled. This is pranayama. So we talk about pranayama as breath control. And yes, as we develop in our practice, pranayama is controlling the breath. But actually, controlling the breath is like the fundamental skills you gain to control the prana. Because pranayama, if you look at the word yama, it means abstinence or control. And if you look at prana, it is this energy of life, this life force. It is a life force that is intelligent, that is communication, that is connection. Most of the time we are practicing pranayama by doing these breath techniques because we have not learned how to move our prana around our bodies and into our minds just yet. But learning the movements of inhalation and exhalation. Most of the time when we take a deep breath in, we focus on taking a slow inhale and then we exhale. Exhales are usually much faster than the inhales when we are unconsciously breathing. When we engage in mindful breathing, the inhale comes in to a certain count and we work towards lengthening the exhalation so that it comes up to twice the amount of the inhalation. That's how we work towards. That's why we have practices like ujjayi, where we constrict the glottis. It's like a bicycle pump. You have a big amount of air that comes into the pump, and when you pump it out, it goes through a very small point so that the power of the breath is like a laser. It's concentrated prana. And it allows the breath, number one, what it does is it allows you to take control over involuntary muscles. When you take control over involuntary muscles, you don't waste prana. And then you learn to direct the prana wherever your focus is into controlling the mind. So when, and let me ask you, how much pranayama do you actually do in your life? I know some yogis that only do pranayama meditation and prayer. That's it. That's all they do. Very little asana. I've been to very orthodox Hindu schools where the asana is literally just a few stretches, all done seated, so that you can go straight into pranayama and meditation. And that is the bulk of the practice. With the system of integral yoga, we do 2/3 is mantra and asana and 1/3 internal practices, yoga nidra, pranayama, meditation. Because we do live in the modern world and asana is very popular, so we spend 2/3 of getting that movement, that agitation, that restlessness out of the way. And then it's easier to go in and meditate. Because let's face it, how many of you find it very difficult to relax? Raise your hand if you have trouble relaxing. Yeah. But let me see, if you go to do a workout and you have a very productive day where you've hit 10 things on your to-do list and you've managed to exercise and you've managed to work out, and then you sit down to relax. How much easier is it to be like, oh, I've done enough, now I deserve this relaxation. That's most of us. We will only relax if we feel that we've allowed ourselves to relax. So integral yoga system has taken that, knowing human nature, saying, okay, 2/3 external, 1/3 internal. And that's why we do it the way we do it. So it all has reasoning behind it. For pranayama to affect the mind, the movement has to be slow and gentle. I read a passage in Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, and he had a passage about pranayama. And he said, fixity of attention depends on slow breathing. So I've written these notes in my own book. It's not in the book, okay? Just in case you see me reading and you're like, where is that passage? These are my own notes that I've written in the book. Fixity of attention depends on slow breathing. Quick or uneven breaths are inevitable accompaniments of harmful emotional states, such as fear, lust, or anger. The restless monkey breathes at a rate of 32 times per minute, in contrast to man's average of 18 times per minute. The elephant, tortoise, snake, and other creatures noted for longevity have a respiratory rate that is less than a man's. The giant tortoise, which may attain the age of 300 years, breathes only 4 times per minute. The ancient texts and poems say that you have been given a certain number of breaths to breathe. How long your life is depends on how slowly you breathe. That's it. Everybody has a fixed number assigned to them. So, moving on to Sutra 50. 1 second. The modifications of the life breath are either external, internal, or stationary. They are to be regulated by space, time, and number, and are either long or short. So here we talk about types of pranayamas. External are exhales, internal are inhales, and stationary is breath retention. Now, as you practice pranayama, you have to start right at the beginning. Retaining the breath, especially if you don't have any experience with pranayamas, can be quite dangerous. Coming back to teachings of Yogananda on pranayama, he says, pranayama should always invoke feelings of peace and by soothing sensation of regenerative effect in the spine. How many times have you done a nadi suddhi and you get out of breath and you feel, oh, I'm so agitated? Or if you breathe and you hold your breath longer than you should in pranayama practice, you feel discombobulated, you feel agitated. That actually hinders your progress in meditation. It's much better to be perfectly honest and have a shallow inhale and a lengthened shallow exhale. The soothing effect will happen and progress in pranayama will happen naturally. The yogic ratio is 1 to 2. So as you breathe in, you breathe out the double count. It's not that you're breathing out more air than you're taking in. You're just slowing the exhalation. So what would be a nice place to start is to take a deep breath in and exhale slowly and fully in a way that is very comfortable for you. So let's say you exhale for only 4 counts, and that is very comfortable. Then make your inhalation 2 counts. Now I know that doesn't sound amazing, inhale for 2, exhale for 4, but try it for a few days. And then if you feel that the capacity of your lungs has increased, increase it to 3 and 6. If it's too much of an agitation, try 3 and 4, 3 and 5, and then 3 and 6, and then see how that works out for you. And again, gradually build it up, build it up, build it up, Build it up. That means your pranayama sitting needs to extend from maybe just 2 minutes to 5 minutes to 10 minutes to 15 minutes to half an hour a day. Slowly and gradually. If you can't manage that in a day, then do 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. Figure out a way to fit it into your life. If you can't do it then, do it while you sit in the car. Do it while you commute at work. Obviously now we're wearing masks, so it's very difficult to do pranayamas like Kapalabhati when you're wearing a mask. So ideally, it's by yourself. Do it in the shower. Find a way to practice your pranayamas. And then the stationary, the breath retention. Now, most of us will learn breath retention once the breath is held in. You can do breath retention when you are on the exhale. When you're practicing things like Uddiyana Bandha, you are exhaling, retaining the external breath, and then pulling the solar plexus in and up to do the bandha, the lock. And then you release the bandha, stand up, and then you take an inhale. And if you've retained the breath too long, you gasp, and you're all discombobulated, then you've overdone it. There is no soothing, regenerative effect on your spine happening. Pranayama is so subtle. It works your subtle nervous system. It is such an inward practice, especially not to be compared to with anybody else. And the mind will say, no, you want that double ratio 1 to 2 right away. You won't get it right away. And you regulate it by space, time, and number, and it's either long or short. So in space, it's where you direct the breath. Is it belly breathing? Is it chest breathing? Is it the focus on the base of the spine? Is the focus on the throat? That is the space. The time is, how long are you spending on your pranayama practice? The number, what is the count? 1 to 2 ratio. Is it 5 counts in, 10 counts out? Or if you're doing something like Kapalabhati, how many expulsions per round? So that's how you regulate your pranayama. And the breath, the modifications of life breath, are either long or short. So if you're doing something like Dirga Swasam, it's long. If you are doing something like Kapalabhati, it's short. Does that make sense? Now I'm going to make you pay attention in the sutra to one word here, okay? It's the third word in Sanskrit, vrittir. Vrittir, modifications of the life breath is called vrittir, which is just like the word vritti, which is the modifications of the mind stuff. This shows us that the breath is linked to the mind. So by modifying your life breath and regulating your life breath, you are regulating the mind. It is absolutely incredible how much this works. If we have time today, we're going to do a little bit of a pranayama workshop to end, so you can experience that. And I'm going to give you some practical tips on how you can adjust your pranayama practice so that you have this feeling of peace and a soothing, regenerative effect on the spine. This is your benchmark. This is your benchmark to know, is your pranayama working for you and giving you the right kind of progress, or is it hindering you for the sake of achieving a certain goal that your mind has set? Right? Because the mind wants you always to be more advanced than you actually are. Sutra 51. There is a fourth kind of pranayama that occurs during concentration on an internal or an external object. This fourth kind of pranayama is called Kevala Kumbhaka. So in the commentary, in the book, the first paragraph after the sutra, you can highlight that paragraph. I'm going to read it out to you. The fourth type of pranayama happens automatically. We do not have to concentrate on retention of breath here because it will stop automatically just by concentrating the mind on a chosen object or idea. This is also called Kevala Kumbhaka, the easy, unintentional retention which occurs automatically in deep meditation. When the mind is deeply concentrated on one thing, the breath automatically stops. You may have experienced it if you yourself are reading a book or working on something and you are in total concentration and focus. The breath naturally stops without you being aware of it. The moment you become aware of it, you take a breath in. You realize that your breath has stopped. So you can never consciously practice Kevala Kumbhaka, but it is a type of pranayama. It is an easy, unintentional breath. Why does the breath stop? Because the mind is quiet. They say that the sages who reach samadhi can stop their breath and not breathe for several minutes, hours even. Scientists have hooked them up. If you look at the studies by the Himalayan Institute with Swami Rama, the scientists hooked him up and he was able to stop his breath and his heartbeat at will. And they were completely flabbergasted and astounded by these findings. But how does this work scientifically? It works scientifically because when the mind has stopped and the digestive system is still and the breath is retained and one-pointed, you are not using up prana. So you are not depleting yourself of prana. It is self-regenerating because it is absolutely still. You have a surplus of prana in the body through all your spiritual practices, and you have stilled the mind. So there is no prana going out, no prana being wasted in anything. And that's how you are able to retain it. This is the state that Sri Patanjali calls samadhi. Most of us are not there yet. And again, in that state of samadhi, there are different layers of consciousness that happen. It's very hard to explain this when you are just in the beginnings of your internal practices. You may be a very accomplished hatha yogi, but if your internal practices are not there yet, there's no point to go into the glory of samadhi. Kumbhaka is automatically achieved. So Saint Tirumular, he is a South Indian sage, and he's written a book called the Tiruvalluvar, which is, again, a South Indian collection of verses that talk about the path of yoga. He says, wherever the mind goes, prana follows. Remember that. It's in your book. It's the first sentence of the last paragraph of Sutra 51 in the commentary. They are inseparable. And this comes back to that word vritir, vritti, the modifications of the life breath, the modifications of the mind. It is one and the same. So if you are in a storm, remember your breath. But most of us don't like pranayama practice. Most of us find pranayama practice very boring. Why? Because we are so attached to the way we think, and we know on some level that changing the breath is going to change our minds, and we just want to be right. We don't want peace. But again, that choice is yours. And the practice is yours for the taking if you want it. It's easier to control the breath than it is to control the mind. Put it that way. But it's hard to remember to call upon the breath at a time of great stress. And this is where all the practices come in. So I have a teacher training course that I developed, which is accessible prenatal yoga. And I teach this to the people that are being trained to become yoga teachers in prenatal yoga. And I say the first and foremost important thing that you have to work with your pregnant students is to teach them how to work with their breath from day one. If they don't spend a big chunk of their practice calling upon their breath as they are progressing through their pregnancy, they will not remember to use their breath in labor. And even if they have been progressing and diligently practicing pranayama, the chances are they will forget to use their breath in labor. They will, because it is such a consuming experience. But I remember in both my labors, I was able to call upon my breath at times where I felt completely overwhelmed. So the daily practice is there like a post-it note, that we stick up on our mirror every single day. And the next day we take that one down, rewrite it, and stick it up. Soon we won't even need the reminder. It's always there with us. Just like those finger exercises when I was practicing piano, the boring, mundane finger exercises. After a while, you don't need the exercises because the music just plays and you know what you can call upon. This is why we have these practices. This is why the discipline is necessary. So that when we are in the storm, we remember to call upon it. And your breath, you don't even have to analyze your thoughts. You don't even have to input gratitude with complaining. If you are in a bad mood, breathe, just breathe. Sutra 52, as a result, the veil over the inner light is destroyed. Hooray, the veil. The veil is Maya, the illusion, the veil of ignorance. It is destroyed. Hooray. And then Sutra 53, and then your mind becomes fit for concentration. So, are you okay to concentrate your mind and sit in meditation without a pranayama practice? You can do it. You can, but it's a little harder. Work with your breath. Work with your breath. And once you've been able to work with your breath, the mind concentration just follows. And this is why in our integral yoga class, we finish the asana, we have the relaxation, we come up feeling renewed, we do a series of pranayama, 3 to 5 different pranayama practices, and then we go into meditation. And we hold that meditation. Now for beginners, it's just 60 seconds in the class to meditate. As you progress and you go into more advanced classes, the meditation becomes 20 minutes long. So the asana becomes a short portion of it, and then the pranayama and the meditation is extended. And you feel the difference in your entire system. And it doesn't mean you don't go out and exercise in other ways, but this is your spiritual practice.